What I want you to be thinking about as we progress is how certain things that you're doing in the Rhino side of the class are going to relate to the Grasshopper side of the course. So to name something that you've been working with quite a bit is lofting. I'm going to show you how to loft in Grasshopper and to kind of manipulate the geometry that you're working with directly in Grasshopper to create new variations of a loft. And then we're going to move into something that's assemblies based, right? So those are the two major components for primarily the rest of the course. Is we're going to learn how to create geometry, and then we're going to learn how do you create complex assemblies out of the geometry. So for this exercise, what we're going to do is base everything off of some simple curves, right? And we're going to get into the realm of, versus what we did in the last assignment, where everything was made entirely in Grasshopper. Well, now we're going to have to rectify, as we progress, more of a model that we've created in Rhino and supplement it with information that we're creating in Grasshopper. So to simulate that, I'm going to create a simple curve. I'm going to go into the front view in order to do that. And I'm just going to create a control point curve. It's over here. I don't know how many of these you've done so far on the Rhino side. But just kind of make it a little bit of an arch. So drop a point to the left, a point as like an apex piece, and then a point off to the right that's roughly equidistant from the center point. And so in the front view, it should look a little bit like this. Now, I'm just going to kind of free build, and what essentially I want to do is create almost like a footbridge, but I'm going to figure out, well, how do I take just the curve of a footbridge and then modify that to be something that I can actually create handrails with, and then modify the handrails and create structure for it or something like that. So the objective is to create a curve that is actually, you know what? I think I want to do it this way. I'm going to create a modifiable curve. Then I'm going to do all that, rather than just a static curve that I would change in Rhino. So let's reference the curve into Grasshopper, and then we'll start to build off of that. So let's just go to Params, Geometry, and Curve, and right-click it, and set one curve, and select it. So with that, I can subdivide it into individual points. So you saw when I did a control point curve, I basically placed a point here, placed a point there, and placed a point here. I'm not going to click it right now, but you can see that the height of the middle point is what gives this arch its radius. So I'm going to subdivide it into two individual subdivisions so I can modify the height of that point. And really that just looks like this. You go to Curve, Division, Divide Curve. So I plug the curve in. You see that it sort of predetermines how many subdivisions to give me with its preloaded number of 10. I am going to change that. 0 is less than 3, less than 5. I think 3 is going to be too many. I just want it to be 2, like this. And so now I can actually change the height of that point by selecting it. And so how do I select one point out of a list of 3 points, like you see here?
Make a list.
What's that?
Make a list.
Well, we have a list. How do I get one item out of a list? Anybody? Under Set, List, which one is going to allow us to get one item out of a list?
List item.
List item, thank you. So I drop in list item. I can plug in the point and I can say 0 is less than 2. And if I select that, you see that the 0 point is all the way on the left. The 1 point is in the middle. And the 2 point is on the end. So point number 1, or index 1, is what I want. And to progress from here, what we need to do is actually figure out how to move that and then remap a curve. So before we move on, I'm going to pause here and make sure that we all have this before I get you ready to move that point. And that's a new term. Now we're moving something. And now a new term, move. Move is under transform. I'm not sure if Jeff described it to you this way, where he was creating or describing all of the modification tools as transformation tools or modification tools. But transform is kind of similar to your modify tools, where basically under affine you'll see that you have scale. Under Euclidean you have move and rotate. Morph, you have these other ones like blend and twist and stuff like that. So it's all about modification to existing geometry. What we are going to do is move the point and then remap a curve using those points. So let's see. I wonder if move away from will work better. Let me see what it asks for. Emitter, geometry, distance. I'll try that one. I've never used it before. But what I usually use is this one that's called move. And I'll teach that one, and then I'll try this one. So move needs two things. It needs the geometry that it's going to move, and it needs the direction that it's going to go. And so the vector meaning direction and magnitude. So I can move this geometry, and you see that it already has preloaded information. If I look down at the translation vector, it says 0, 0, 10. And so if you know how to read that by now, you all should. That's 0 in the x direction, 0 in the y direction, and 10 in the z direction. So that's why, if you're looking at it in perspective, it moved up. And I can override that by giving it a new value. So I can change the direction it's going to move, but for me, I'm going to, just to be safe, drop in a unit z, because I know I just want it to go straight up, and then give it a numerical value. So 0 is less than 10 is less than, say, 20. So now I can actually change how high that thing really is, from 0 to 20 feet higher than it already is. Yes?
What window did you create your curve in the first place?
Sorry?
What window did you create your curve in the first place?
I created my curve in the front view. So it lives along the x-axis.
I think I did the same thing, and well, I probably didn't, but now it's flat in perspective, flat on the x and y plane.
Then you drew it in the top view,
Okay.
like this.
So I can just erase my curve and write on and then create a new one and then reference that.
Or grab it and rotate it up.
Oh. Oh, that's what
Oh, not that way. Sorry. That's the wrong way. You can just rotate it 90 degrees this way, and now it's back in the same orientation. Did Jeff go over the gumball with all of you? I got some yeses, some nos. Okay. All right. So now we figured out how to actually move the point, but we want to remap a new curve for it, and so we could essentially create each point individually and then position them. That's fine. But since I already created the curve, I'm going to do another list item and grab the other two. I need to do this 2 more times actually. And I'm going to grab the other 2 surfaces, or not surfaces, sorry, points that I did not grab before. So I've got 0 and I've got 2. Yeah. Because it's just based on a 3-point curve, so I only need 3 of them. If it was any more than, say, 3, I probably would not bother with list item, and I would just go back and reconstruct the points individually or find some other way to do it.
They should be connected to each other?
No, they're not connected to each other. They're all just mapped back to P.
Only one's connected to them.
No, actually, I was.
Okay. So I've got each individual point now. 2 of them are in the same place. 1 of them is not. What I need to do is map a new curve to it, but I need to be careful about how I'm mapping them. So they need to be mapped in order, otherwise you're going to get a conflict. So when I go to curve and I go to primitive, I need to do what's called arc 3-point. It's down here. And it's going to ask you for point A, point B, and point C. And so if I'm not mistaken, it needs to be in order, otherwise you're going to get a loop that's going to try and turn back on itself. So let's try this out. If I go from 0 to 1, which is my new point right here, and then I plug in 2 to C, then I get the new arc. And as I change this value, that arc will change as well. Making sense?
What's the name of that node with the N on it?
This is unit Z. It's actually a Z, not an N. It's just sideways. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is get to this point. Oh, let me see if I can show you real quick if we did this the wrong way. Let me disconnect that and disconnect that and disconnect this. So if I just went down the line and I connected them and I said arc A, arc B, and arc point C, that's what I get instead. Because it's starting from point 2, it's going around back to point 0, and then ending at point 1. So you just need to be careful about what's what there. So I'd like you to get to a point where you can actually change the angle of the arc here, or the radius of the arc, and then we'll move forward in actually creating a geometry that's going to map intelligently with it.